What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, we have some interesting news. As undefeated 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the WBO World Boxing Organization reigning welterweight world champion, who is widely considered by many to be the #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Terence "Bud" Crawford. 38 wins, no losses, no draws, 29 big wins by way of knockout, 34 years of age, 5'8" with a 74-inch arm reach. The last time we saw Terence Crawford in the ring was November 20th of 2021 when he took on and defeated two-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Sean Porter in a manner never saw or done before, when he dropped Sean Porter twice in the 10th round and ultimately got the stoppage victory when Sean Porter's father, trainer, and manager, Kenny Porter, saw enough and waved the white towel. With that said, Terence Crawford, after the fight, parted ways with his longtime promoter, legendary promoter CEO Bob Arum, and Top Rank and ESPN. It was highly anticipated to see what was next for Terence Crawford, as the boxing world understood that Terence Crawford had one fight left with Top Rank and Bob Arum and ESPN. And the fact is that everybody was anticipating, because Terence Crawford just wasn't getting the biggest fights possible, okay? Everybody wanted to see the biggest fight in the sport of boxing between Terence Crawford himself and undefeated unified WBC IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer, who is widely considered by many to be top 3 best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, and Earl "The Truth" Spence Jr. 27 wins, no losses, no draws, 31 years of age, 5'9.5" with a 72-inch arm reach. Now, Earl Spence, he seems set to go into a massive unification bout, putting his 2 belts on the line against WBA, World Boxing Association, Cuban star boxer, who currently is the welterweight WBA super champion, in Yordenis Ugas. Yordenis Ugas is 27 wins, 4 losses, no draws, 12 wins by way of knockout. He is 35 years of age, 5'9.5" with a 69-inch arm reach. So it looks like we're going to get Errol Spence versus Yordenis Ugas in April 16th, possibly in Arlington, Texas, Dallas Cowboys Stadium, AT&T. So with that said, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford make for the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. Terence Crawford, the biggest fight of his career at 34 years of age, was his fight with Sean Porter, his last fight. Everybody wanted to see Terence Crawford in two-time 2-division world champions, Puerto Rican superstar boxer Danny Swift Garcia, or Terence Crawford versus Sean Porter earlier in his career, or Terence Crawford versus former unified welterweight world champion superstar boxer Keith "One-Time" Thurman, who was back in action yesterday when he took on Mario Barrios after a 2-year layoff and hiatus. Everybody wanted to see Terence Crawford against the likes of these guys, these high-level opposition. And we've yet to see Terence Crawford step in the ring with the high-level opposition until November 20th, this late in his career. Now, he has accomplished a lot in his career, but the biggest names he beat in his career were guys that seem to be far past their prime, like multi-division world champion British superstar boxer Amir King Khan, or former IBF world champion welterweight superstar British boxer Special K Kell Brook, who was far past his prime, okay, late in his career. So we have yet to see, Terence Crawford face off against the best, aside from when he fought against Olympic gold medalist, 3-division world champion, Cuban superstar boxer Yuriokis Gamboa, okay? And he did fight against Victor Postol in a unification bout, but he beat Julius Indongo in the undisputed match, but Julius Indongo was seen to be a one-hit wonder. With that said, Terence Crawford, it seemed like it was his promoter, Bob Arum, who stated that Terence Crawford was very difficult to deal with in negotiations. Terence Crawford is not a big draw, and he lost so much money on Terence Crawford he could build a mansion in Beverly Hills from scratch, okay? And then Bob Arum, he stated that he stood in the way of Terence Crawford in another mega fight that Terence Crawford have been seeking out for quite some time, and that's a fight with legendary 8-division world champion, iconic Filipino superstar boxer Manny "Pac-Man" Pacquiao. It looked like Terence Crawford had been seeking out a fight with Manny Pacquiao for a better part of 5 years, okay? Since about 2015, it was being mentioned that it was a strong possibility it could take place, and moving forward, okay, to today. Now, there was multiple occasions where Bob Arum stated that the fight could have been made, but he just simply blocked it, okay, for multiple reasons. One being Terence Crawford is not a big draw to pay the purses, and that Terence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao were looking to receive 2 bigger purses and not see them get enough return on their investment. So they were unwilling to make it happen. As late as June 5th of 2021, Bob Arum was talking about it could have been a fight between Manny Pacquiao and Terence Crawford, but the investment group in Abu Dhabi, they were willing to pay for the fight, but they dropped out. And Bob Arum, he stated that ESPN Top Rank, they could have invested the money to make it happen, but they were unwilling to do so because Terence Crawford simply is not a big draw. He doesn't promote himself. So with that said, Bob Arum, he's stating that Terence Crawford is asking for too much. So after Terence Crawford parted ways, post-fight press conference after he beat Sean Porter, he stated that Bob Arum couldn't secure the big fights for me when I was with him. He couldn't secure the Errol Spence fight. He ain't going to be able to secure it when I'm not with him, okay? Simply put, that he's just not. So that's the biggest fight in the sport of boxing, but it was unable for him to secure it, is the Errol Spence fight, okay? And so now Terence Crawford is taking Bob Arum to court, citing that they made promises they didn't fulfill. And they blocked a lot of his fights, and they simply did not know how to promote African-American fighters, or were unwilling to do so, didn't show much interest in doing so. So that left Terence Crawford a free agent. But what's ironic is, what's interesting is, you had PBC, Premier Boxing Champions, spokesperson come out, and he stated that, Terence Crawford could be pricing himself out. But he stated, Tim Smith said that Terence Crawford could be pricing himself out of a fight. But at the same time, he doesn't even know the number that Terence Crawford is looking at. Now, I told you guys I didn't believe that to be true. I felt like Tim Smith was well aware of the number that Terence Crawford was looking at or were looking for, and he was just didn't want to put his business out there. And Tim Smith, he stated that Terence Crawford is not promoted, not a pay-per-view star, and he could be pricing himself out, is what he alluded to, okay? Then you had Bob Arum. Obviously, he responded by saying that Terence Crawford is looking just to simply, gain money without having to do the footwork and put the necessary work in to make himself a superstar. And that, it was on Terence Crawford that the Errol Spence didn't come to fruition. Now, Errol Spence, in the reports, according to Terence Crawford, was on the table for Terence Crawford should he help for Top Rank fulfill their obligation to ESPN and to get a renewal with ESPN should he fight his mandatory in Igis Kavalauskas. So he fought Igis Kavalauskas with the handshake and promise that they would negotiate for Errol Spence on the back end, and he would receive a $900,000 signing bonus, okay? So he was supposed to receive a mega signing bonus for Errol Spence fight, plus his base salary of $3.5 million. So he would have received, 3.5 to $4.5 million. So Terence Crawford would have received upwards of $5 million should he have been able to secure the fight with Errol Spence Jr., but he cited that they were the ones that blocked it. So it's ironic that Bob Arum is saying this. You had Tim Smith for the PBC come out, and he stated that Terence Crawford essentially is pricing himself out, looking for a number that's not feasible because of the lack of star power he brings to the table. And now you have Matchroom CEO and promoter Eddie Hearn coming out and uttering the same sentiments, okay? Now you have three different people. Now one will wonder, are they all in cahoots, allegedly, right? Or is it just Terence Crawford is the common denominator here, okay? Because now Eddie Hearn is saying that he was willing or will be willing to sign Terence Crawford, but Terence Crawford has to be realistic with his demands for the purses that he's seeking. And he said that it would be nearly impossible for us to get the numbers that he's looking for in the purses for the fights that he wants because of the lack of star power he has. So Eddie Hearn is saying that DAZN, Matchroom, and himself would be willing to sign Terence Crawford as long as he's being realistic with the purses that he's looking for in the fights that he wants to make. They can make the fights happen, but he has to be realistic with the purses that he's seeking out. That's pretty deep to say because we know DAZN, Eddie Hearn, and Matchroom have been putting out big money for fights, okay? Same goes for the PBC, Premier Boxing Champions. They have been putting out big money, mainly for the likes of the heavyweights, Deontay Wilder, Errol Spence, Saul Canelo Alvarez. But Terence Crawford is considered and should be considered in that class of fighters, okay? Because he's considered the best fighter in the world, okay? Undefeated. So he should be considered in the same light as those guys. Okay, now we know as the heavyweight division goes, so goes the sport of boxing. But Terence Crawford should not be considered anything less. And it's ironic too, because we know Floyd Mayweather, he said that he gave Terence Crawford the blueprint, and he don't understand why he never followed it. Okay, so now you have Eddie Hearn simply saying that Terence Crawford is pricing himself out of the fights. So now you have three separate promoters. Bob Arum is saying it, PBC is saying it, and now Eddie Hearn is saying that they would have been willing to sign him, open to sign him, if he's open to being realistic with the purses that he's seeking out. So is this a clear case of Terence Crawford is the common denominator in preventing himself from securing these big fights? Okay, because if you listen to his team talk, they'll tell you that it's everybody else but Terence Crawford. Okay, so Eddie Hearn is saying that he's not realistic. So that means they had to have some sort of contact, and they had to have some sort of information swap back and forth of what he's looking for. Okay, and so Eddie Hearn is saying he's not realistic. That's ironic. And Terence Crawford being 34 years of age, seeking out the big fights, this is going to hinder his career. He needs to, be able to figure it out. He's in court with Bob Arum. He's seeking out $10 million. We have to see how this plays out, because Terence Crawford is 34 years of age. He'll be 35 in September. If Terence Crawford doesn't have a fight in the foreseeable future, and maybe in the summertime, there was being talked about Terence Crawford and, Keith Thurman in July. He's going to need to land one of those fights, or it's going to tell you that Terence Crawford, who didn't want to do a deal with Errol Spence, according to Terence Crawford, 60-40 wasn't suffice. It had to be 50-50 or 60-40 in his favor. So maybe Terence Crawford is pricing himself out of these big fights, and it's on Terence Crawford. So we got to see how this moves forward and plays out with his career. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
Alicia Baumgartner, you're watching Blue Blood Sports TV. Wow.